She was on her knees scrubbing the hallway floor when he walked straight through her bucket. He didn't even step around it. Dirty water splashed across her uniform, her hands, her face. And Dr. Richard Holt, the most celebrated surgeon at Meridian Hospital, the man who had appeared on the cover of 3 magazines that year, didn't stop, didn't apologize, didn't look back. Because to him, Eleanor simply didn't exist. But in 18 minutes, that same hallway would change everything. Because in 18 minutes, a man's heart was going to stop, and the only human being in that hospital capable of saving him was on her knees, with dirty water on her hands, being treated like she was nothing. Her name was Elena Sousa, and this is the story that Meridian Hospital never wanted anyone to know. Subscribe right now and hit the bell. You need to see where this story goes. 5 years ago, Elena Sousa had her own practice. Not just any practice, one of the most respected interventional cardiology clinics in the country. 17 years of experience, 4 publications in international medical journals, an 8-month waiting list. She had saved 342 hearts. She always counted. Then came the complaint. A colleague who wanted her position. A process that dragged on for 2 years. A forced leave that became a suspension that destroyed everything. The investigation was eventually dropped. The accusation was false from beginning to end. But her name had already been destroyed. No prestigious hospital would take her back, not after everything that had been printed. So she made the one move nobody expected. She applied for a job at the only hospital that had refused to participate in the case against her. Meridian Hospital. Not as a doctor, as a janitor, because she needed to be near patients. She needed to hear the monitors. She needed to remember why she had chosen medicine at 19 years old, and because she knew that the truth, sooner or later, always finds a way to surface. Dr. Richard Holt was 47 years old and had never once doubted himself. 3rd generation of physicians, trained in Europe, specialized in the United States. He returned as though he was doing the country a favor. He was brilliant. Nobody argued that. But brilliant to Richard meant he didn't need to be anything else. Didn't need to be kind. Didn't need to be patient. Didn't need to remember the names of residents or greet the nursing staff or step around a bucket in the hallway. It was a Tuesday morning. Eleanor was on her knees scrubbing a stain near the door of the diagnostic center. Dr. Holt came out of the adjacent room at a quick pace, phone to his ear, eyes forward. His foot caught the bucket square on. Water went everywhere. Elena jumped up one too late. Uniform soaked, hands dirty, supplies scattered across the floor. Holt stopped, looked at her, looked at the bucket, looked at her again, and said, with the casual ease of someone commenting on the weather, "Could you not put a sign out? Or is that asking too much from someone who mops floors?" The receptionist at the front desk pretended not to hear. The resident passing by found the ceiling suddenly very interesting. Eleanor said nothing. She bent down, picked up the bucket, and began collecting her supplies from the floor. "Unbelievable," Holt muttered into his phone as he resumed walking. "They can't even apologize, these people." She waited until he turned the corner. Then she closed her eyes for exactly 3 seconds, breathed, and went back to work. Comment right now, just the word heart if you already know what's about to happen. Let's see who figured it out. The sound started in room 512, high-pitched, continuous, the kind of alarm that makes every nurse drop what they're doing. Eleanor was in the adjacent hallway when the door opened, and Nurse Claire came out in a fast walk, calling for backup. The patient was Robert Alderman, 62 years old, admitted 2 days earlier for chest pain, apparently stable. Apparently. Within 2 minutes, there were 4 people in the room. Within 3 minutes, Dr. Holt was paged over the radio. Within 4 minutes, Holt walked through the door with his coat still in his hand, assessed the monitor, assessed the patient, and understood. Massive cardiac event, unusual blockage pattern, immediate intervention required. But there was a problem. The echocardiogram taken at admission was incomplete. The data didn't match, and without understanding the specific anatomy of that particular heart, any intervention would be a shot in the dark. "Where's the cardiologist on call?" Holt asked. "Emergency surgery on the 3rd floor," Claire answered. "Unavailable for at least 40 minutes. Holt looked at the monitor. Robert Alderman had maybe 20 minutes. That was when a voice came from the doorway. Calm, precise, certain. The blockage is in the left bundle branch with septal deviation. You'll need subclavian access on the left side, not femoral. If you go in through the standard route with this specific pattern, you'll lose him. Everyone turned. Helena was standing in the doorway, janitor uniform, rubber gloves still on her hands. Holt stared at her. "What did you just say?" "I said the access point needs to be the left subclavian. Look at the V4 lead on the EKG. The deviation is anatomical, not functional. If you don't correct your entry route, the catheter won't reach where it needs to go." Complete silence. "This is not your place," he said, voice low. "Get out." "Robert Alderman has an interventricular septal anomaly," Helena continued, not moving. "It's not in his file because he didn't know about it himself. But it's in the admission EKG if you look at the right lead." Nurse Claire picked up the EKG, looked again. "She's right," Claire said quietly. Holt turned to Claire with an expression that could freeze water. "You're taking medical direction from a janitor?" "I'm taking direction from someone who identified in 10 seconds what we've been missing for 2 days," Claire replied. The monitor accelerated. Time running out. "Who are you?" Helena pulled off her rubber gloves slowly. "Dr. Elena Sousa, interventional cardiologist, license number 47832, administratively suspended 3 years ago on a false complaint. Case dismissed for lack of evidence 8 months ago. I saved 342 hearts before you ever knew my name." The monitor on Robert fired into fibrillation. "And right now," she said, looking at the screen, "we need to save 343. The hospital director was contacted in 30 seconds. The decision took 45. Dr. Elena Sousa entered the operating room in her janitor uniform because there was no time for anything else. Someone handed her a pair of surgical gloves. Someone brought her the complete file. And for 57 minutes, she did what she had known how to do since she was 19 years old. Richard Holt stood outside for the entire surgery. He didn't leave, he didn't check his phone, he didn't speak to anyone. He just watched. Watching her hands, the precision, the calm. Watching the monitor stabilize slowly, steadily. Watching Robert Alderman's heart find its rhythm again. When she came out, there were 6 people in the hallway. Nobody spoke for a moment. Then Nurse Claire started clapping. Slowly, one clap, another, and the entire hallway joined in. Helena stopped, looked at her still-gloved hands, breathed deeply, and for the first time in 3 years let a tear fall. Share this video right now with someone who needed a story like this today. And keep watching, because what comes next is the best part. Hospital Director Dr. Paul Andrews sat at the head of the table with a file in front of him. On one side, Helena, on the other, Holt. "I want to hear from both of you," he said. Holt spoke first, professional, calculated. He acknowledged Eleanor's intervention as relevant given the circumstances. Andrews let him finish. Then he opened the file. "Dr. Sousa, the complaint that resulted in your suspension was dismissed 8 months ago due to insufficient evidence. The medical board reinstated your license 6 weeks ago." Eleanor looked up. "I know. You knew before you applied here as a janitor?" "Yes." "Why?" Andrews asked. Eleanor was quiet for a moment. "Because I needed to understand whether this hospital deserved my trust again. I needed to see how you treated people who couldn't defend themselves, how you treated those without power." She looked at Holt. "Now I know." His eyes were open when Helena came in, still in her janitor uniform, her last day with it. "Are you the doctor who saved me?" he asked, voice hoarse. "I am," she said simply. He looked at her for a long moment. "My daughter told me what happened, that you were cleaning the hallway when—" "That doesn't matter," she said gently. "It matters to me," he replied. She nodded. "Then I'm glad." Director Paul Andrews was waiting at the main door. "We have a formal offer," he said, "head of the Interventional Cardiology Department, with the appropriate contract corrections and a public acknowledgement of the institutional failure in the disciplinary process." Eleanor looked up at the building, thought about the 343 hearts, thought about the ones still waiting. "Send me the contract," she said. "I'll read it." He smiled. She passed through the same hallway where she had been on her knees with the bucket, stopped at the same spot, looked at the floor, and kept walking. Dr. Richard Holt requested a transfer to another unit 3 weeks later. Nobody ever knew the official reason, but those who had been in that hallway on that day, those who watched a man in an expensive coat stand outside an operating room window, unable to walk away, had a pretty good idea. Sometimes it's not the humiliation that changes a person. It's the clarity, seeing with your own eyes, that you looked directly at someone's greatness and chose to see only their uniform. Helena Sousa returned to work the following Monday. White coat, name embroidered on the pocket, her own office, and a list of patients waiting. 344, 345. She counted. She always counted. If you made it to the end, thank you. That tells me you're exactly the kind of person this channel exists for. Share this with someone who needs to hear that their moment is still coming. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next story, which is already ready and even more powerful than this one.